Hi, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We are back again with our A Day in the Life of an Entrepreneur. And this time, I have a very, very special person whom I admire, and most of us in India in cybersecurity admire. So let me just go ahead and get him in the stream, and we will talk more about him. Thank you so much, Vivek, for joining me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Vandana. It's absolute pleasure and looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you. So, everyone, Vivek, all of you already know about Vivek, but let me just give a small, small intro and then I will let him talk about his journey. I know a bits and pieces about it, but I want to know everything if you can share in short. So, Vivek started Pentester Academy, and we all have been fond of Pentester Academy. But now he started SquareX. Trust me, Vivek, I have been speaking with people, and they've been talking so much highly about SquareX.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's great to know.
Yeah. So I want to actually start off with getting to know about how exactly this all started. How did you get the idea of Pentester Academy, or how exactly did you start in cybersecurity?
Hmm. hmm. Yeah, I think if you go like way back, this was probably the year 1999, probably somewhere around that. So I got my first computer, I think 1995, 1996. I always seem to kind of like kind of miss out on the exact date, but those were the times when getting a computer into India used to be like a crazy amount of work, and you had to import it and all of that. So anyway, I got hooked to computers fairly early on, and the big pivotal moment was really the year, if I remember, 1999 2000, when these very big distributed denial of service attacks were happening on Yahoo and a bunch of places, and this was all out in the news. And when I started looking at the news article, I read that there was this attack tool called TFN, Tribal Flood Network, which was actually used for this DDoS attack. And this was created by this German hacker called Mixter. I'm sure he's probably alive and well somewhere. uh, and interestingly, I was able to do some searches and download that tool. And when I downloaded the tool, opened it up, it was all C programming. And at that point, I had no exposure to C or anything, right? This was, I guess I was in grade 11, something like that. I knew a little bit of basic programming, but that was it. But what fascinated me was just one guy being able to create something which ended up controlling the whole internet, you know? And that is when I started digging deeper. I had a friend nearby who was doing his early first year, second year computer science at a university. And then he said, "Hey, Vivek, this is C programming, and this is what we learn in the first year, da da da." And that's when I started teaching myself programming all by myself. So C. Then I heard that so there were these e-zines online, code breakers, whatnot, which used to have topics like how to write your own virus, Toad virus, a simple com infector. So that's really how it kind of like started. Then I went to IIT. Interestingly, 85% of all my fellow students had never ever seen a computer. This was the year 2000, right? 24 years back. And so when I went in, I felt like I already had a head start. And when you're that young, you have a head start in something, you want to keep it on. And from there on, I kind of started compounding that further. But I'll just stop there briefly. So that's really how I started, and then it compounded from there.
That's totally amazing, and especially when you had start something, it actually gives you a very big playground to play around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So now, how exactly did you start with Pentester Academy?
Yeah, yeah. So I think what happened once I graduated is I worked for a couple of companies like Cisco Systems and others, primarily doing layer 2 security programming. So I was a programmer pretty early on, but very quickly I figured like I didn't enjoy building systems as much as I enjoyed breaking it. So I was lucky to get like a breakthrough, working for this company, Airtight Networks, where Praveen Bhagwat, the CTO of the company, told me, "Hey, there is this technology, web cloaking, which is supposed to protect web. We feel it is completely broken. Can you prove it? Can you go ahead and show this?" So I spent a lot of time. Interestingly, it was more mathematics than cybersecurity, for what it's worth. But I managed to break that whole thing. And then he said, "Hey, why don't we submit it to Defcon and this massive hacker conference?" And keep in mind, this is the year 2007, right? I don't even remember if any Indian had ever spoken at Defcon, back then.
Right.
And I had only seen Defcon Blackhat videos online, so I felt it was a long shot. And I just submitted. I said, "Chalo, theek hai, let's submit and let's see what happens." So then Defcon accepted it, and then I went did the main stage talk. And I think that was a very big leap for me because I quickly understood that probably I was good enough already to compete at the world stage, right? And it's very rare. Now, keep in mind, today's times is very different, right? Everybody travels,
Right.
you meet people from different countries and so many other things. So you have a very easy way to draw a baseline. When you, for example, look at a security person in the US or Europe or India, and okay, roughly everybody's the same. You have access to equal material, whatnot. Those days it wasn't that cut and dry, right? Like, so that was a very big realization, and I also got very hooked because I felt like I had kind of found a tribe, in Defcon, where I saw so many other people who were also interested in breaking security. And then I came back, and that's when I said, okay, I am enjoying this, let's do this. So then quickly discovered the cafe latte attack, a bunch of other things. And then I said, hey, I don't think I can ever work for a company in India who would allow me to spend all my time doing research, breaking security, and also paying me. So what happened is I finally decided, let's quit my job and let's actually move back to my parents' home. And in the West they will say basement, but my parents actually had a mezzanine floor, a very small
Mhm.
floor, almost just I think 200 square feet, something like that, with an attached
Mhm.
bathroom. And so I kind of made that my layer where I sat down and started looking at things. But here's what happened. I said, hey, what do I do? I'm doing all of this research, learning all of these new things. So I said, why not put up videos, because it's a good way for me also to recollect what I'm learning and put that up. And that's when I started this site called securitytube.net. And this was just me posting free lectures, wasn't really expecting anything out of it. Was very happy that people were viewing it, replying with comments. And once again, keep in mind, this was all like pre-null era and all of that. There was no community around security
Right.
people. Nobody knew anybody, right?
Right.
In the whole of India, probably I could count 10, 12 people who I knew were working in cybersecurity, right? This was 2009, I think, just 2 years later. So accidentally, I kind of became an entrepreneur, and here is how. Once I put up Security Tube, so many people from around the world started viewing it, and then training institutes started contacting me saying, "Our staff is actually going through your videos, learning. Do you think you could come down and teach folks?" So the very first, I think, major breakthrough which happened was there's this company called Belgacom, which is one of the largest
Mhm.
ISPs in Belgium, and they owned a training institute. I forget the name of the institute now. And they reached out to me and said, "Would you want to come down here, park yourself for like a few weeks or a month or so, and teach back-to-back offensive cybersecurity classes like Wi-Fi security and whatnot?" Exchange rate worked. I felt okay, 4 weeks, and I can probably save enough to just do, an annual salary. Went there, did that, liked the experience. And then what started happening is people just started contacting me and said, come down, come down. So honestly, in the very beginning, I was thinking if I could just save enough that I could just keep doing security research and go speak at places, that would be great. But then, the amount of requests compounded, and I quickly figured, like, okay, you know what, maybe this could be bigger, where I could actually do this for the rest of my life, not just a few years. So then I launched Security Tube Training, which was just a way where people could download video courses, get certified, whatnot. Interestingly, the reason it all worked, and I always go back why it's important to contribute to a community before you should ever expect anything back, is when I launched my first paid course, literally hundreds of people went ahead and bought it. And that was a big surprise. And by the way, I had just set up PayPal, and PayPal blocked my account because they thought I was scamming people.
Oh God.
Yeah, because imagine you're charging $250, and this is when 2011.
Right.
Uh, you just send an email to all securitystube.net users
Mm-hmm.
who probably were like a couple of thousand, and a few hundred of them buy it like overnight.
Right.
So PayPal blocked us. It took me almost 3 weeks to send them enough documentation to finally get the money.
Right.
Uh, but I think from there on, I slowly, I would say I was never really a businessman or never really wanted to be an entrepreneur. I'm from a service family. My parents have all worked at banks. Uh, but slowly what made me realize is, hey, you know what, if you enjoy what you do and that can also pay the bills, that is the best combination ever, right? So then it compounded. Eventually I figured like maybe doing a subscription service made sense, and that's how then I kind of overall I would say rehauled pentester sorry securitystube.net as Pentester Academy. Pentester for the first few years was pure subscription video, downloadable course material, and all of that. Compounded quite fast. Like it was fairly unbelievable how fast Pentester grew. To give you an idea, we hit the first 1,000 paying users in 7 days of launch.
Wow.
Yeah, and
I
again,
think
all props to the community who trusted me always and kind of came back to me. And from there on, I think it grew quite a bit. Eventually, we also introduced labs in the cloud, where we created our own lab platform, which I felt like, even back in the day, interestingly, even today is probably, one of the best platforms out there. Anyway, so that's how PTA happened. Very accidental entrepreneur rather than somebody who wrote a business plan, uh, went to investors, none of that stuff.
I think the best of things happens with the serendipity.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. And now, how's your journey with SquareX? And I want to really know about how exactly your day looks like. Now, I would say that you are a serial entrepreneur, whether you accept it or not, but you are. So, how's with SquareX and how's your day looks like?
Yeah, I mean, so I think, after I sold and exited Pentester Academy, I started looking back and see the big advantage I had in hindsight is it's very rare for people to get to work with so many different technologies and also to a decent amount of depth, which I got an opportunity because I was into teaching and training, right, in Pentester Academy. So, having looked at all of that, I basically always used to wonder, hey, end user security is still broken, right? There are so many different attacks which are still happening. Why aren't companies fixing it? Why aren't security products fixing it? So, when I exited Pentester, at that time, of course, I took a little bit of detour, did a hacker comic, and then I said, okay, maybe I should just become a comic book writer. I mean, I shouldn't probably go back and do a very strained kind of strenuous startup again. But excuse me, I'm just recovering from a cold. So that is when I quickly thought like, okay, maybe this is an interesting idea. So started researching quite a bit, and then I kind of hit upon the whole thing that, hey, look, endpoint security, browser security, all of these things are evolving. At the very same time, I feel like for the next 10 to 15 years, we will probably continue to use a web browser. We will still continue to use laptops and endpoints. That isn't going to change, right? Uh, Primarily rooted in the fact that technology may kind of go ahead and increase its own momentum, but our human senses have limitations on how we process information, right? So the simple logic was, today think about it, if I gave you a 6-inch laptop, do you think you can be productive? Probably
I
not,
don't think so. No?
right? So everybody was fascinated to get down the laptop screen size to 14 inches, then
Right.
13. But then people were like, hey, 13 is just too small, can't do much work with it. So really we know that even though people are saying, hey, we are going to have like an AI pin and so on and so forth and whatnot, I kind of feel like during at least most of our working lifetime, which is at least next 10, 15 years, I think we are still going to rely on laptops and regular computing devices. And that's where I felt that was a problem statement. If I picked up, I could be engaged in building something over the next 10, 20 years. So this one, Vandana, as you said, so serial entrepreneur is always a very tricky word. So people come to me and say, "Oh, Vivek, tell me how should we get something right?" And I say, "Look, I only have data point of one, which is a very small data point."
Right.
So I always look at it and say, when you start something new, have a beginner's bias. I tell the team we should not assume that we know how to make something successful. Just go into the trenches, dig deep, whatnot. So that was the time when I said, okay, a browser-based endpoint security solution made sense to me, because of a variety of reasons. And that's when I started, invested some money from my side, got the early team in, started building, started researching. I had a very good, relationship with Sequoia Capital, Anandamoy Roy from Sequoia, who's now Peak 15. I think they rebranded, but they were investors in Pentester Academy as well. And that's really when, I kind of spoke with them. And at that point, I really didn't want any external money, but they were people I respected so much, I liked so much, especially Roy, that I really wanted, him to be part of the journey from the get go. So that's really when we ended up, raising a $6 million round May of this year from Sequoia Capital, and then started building the company out.
Yeah, your journey is totally incredible. Lot to learn.
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody's journey is incredible. There's a lot of good things to learn from everyone. Honestly, there is from everybody, no exception really. Yeah.
Yeah. So how exactly do you start your day and how do
Okay.
you manage everything? Because there are too many things to take care of. So how do you balance out that? And you have to travel a lot as well.
Right. So pre-COVID, I used to travel quite a bit. Now I'm kind of getting back to the same cycle again. But what I would say is the first thing is make sure to understand that most days will not be perfect, right? And I think now that we are expanding the team and all of that stuff, so the only thing I do is early in the morning when I wake up, apart from trying my best to take a walk or once in a while hit the gym, the whole thought process basically is, hey, how do I do needle moving work on a daily basis, right? And the whole thought process around that is, you have technical teams, you have go to market teams. My main literally work day begins with looking at what happened in the previous day, what challenges the team is facing, what improvements I think we can do, whether it is on the tech side, whether it is on the marketing side and whatnot, and then kind of formulate my thoughts around, like, having those team discussions. So now almost daily, I spend at least an hour or so with the tech teams. I at least spend 2 to 3 hours with the GTM teams, because, I mean, tech teams, if you bother them more than that, you're wasting their time because they need time to build. Once I do all of that, I think around noon time, I will sit down and think about strategy. I will sit down and think about, future round of investors. Think about like what kind of angels we would probably want involved in the phase of the company, who to hire. Start reaching out to all-star peoples to at least begin discussions. So all of that then continues to around like 5 p.m., where I again try to regroup if there was something the teams wanted to show me by the end of the day. That goes on till around like 6:37. Then I head back home. So I'd say I try my best to organize the day in a very structured way. But being a founder, CEO, my job is literally just to empower others, take quick decisions, and get out of the way. So I think this is primarily what I do. You're muted, Vandana.
Oh, sorry. That's
Yeah.
my bad habit. That's a very structured way where you know exactly that, okay, this is a time that I'll be doing this. It's more around brainstorming and what to do and what not to do. That's
Right.
very, very interesting. Actually, one question personally for myself.
Yeah.
If you are teaching your mentee or your juniors or people who are budding entrepreneurs, three lessons, what would you want to impart them with those lessons and what would those learnings be from your experience, whether it's failure, whether it's your win-wins? So I would want to learn from your experience.
Yeah. Uh, I think to kind of begin with, understand that entrepreneurship is a very, very hard journey, right? Most of the time, things are breaking, things aren't working. And you have to be the most positive person in the whole team because everybody looks up to you. And I think, I think a lot of folks, when they start off, they don't understand this, especially first time entrepreneurs or probably folks who are much younger, because they themselves are developing their own personality, right? uh, and that's really where I would kind of say that make sure that even if there are dark times, you are always super positive around the journey, because if you look like you've lost hope, your entire team loses hope almost immediately, right? Alongside with that, understand that every team member is also a human being. I've seen a lot of narrative around like, oh, let's do this 18 hours, 20 hours. And truth be told, there are days that me and some of my team members do work those long hours. But also understand that there will be some days where people will have downtimes, people will be sick, people will have personal things to attend to, or just not be productive. So you have to look at the average value of a person, not the sinusoidal, kind of like peaks and troughs. So being a people person is very, very important when you want to start building a team, because end of the day, you're working with people, right? You're not working with machines. So that's would be like number one: be positive, be human. uh, the second thing I would kind of say is like be exceptionally determined. And the only reason I kind of say that is everybody will challenge you on your thesis, right? So as a simple example, I went to Silicon Valley, spoke to many people, investors, advisors, whom not. There were some who absolutely challenged the way I was thinking, and they were like, "Hey, Vivek, I don't think this makes as much sense. Maybe you should do this. Maybe you should do that." Now, take feedback, process feedback, but most importantly, make sure that you take your own decision, provided that you have enough conviction. And this is important because, along the way, there will be many times that your fundamental thesis around what you're building, how you're building, will be challenged. Sometimes by others, sometimes even by the market. Maybe you build an early product, you put it out, people aren't using it as much. So many things can happen. So I think that's a very underrated skill, right? People will talk about charisma, people will talk about this, that, but what they don't talk about is, can you really be super determined over a very long period of time? I can tell you, when I was starting Pentester and I put out like a big mail saying, "Hey, here are my videos," actually security tube training. The first email somebody sent back to me was, "You sound like Apu from The Simpsons," right? And I mean, barring the whole racial aspect of the comment, it for a second I was just asking myself, okay, can anyone with an Indian accent really build an online education company, right? And yeah,
Yeah.
so sorry, you muted. Yeah.
No, I was saying, I think back then, I don't think so. Even now, it takes a lot of guts to do that.
Correct.
Yeah.
So you're right, and that's really where finally what I thought to myself back in the day, 2007. Uh, I basically said 2009. What I basically said was, look, even out of 100 people, if 10 people love my work, you know what? I could do this in a sustainable way for the rest of my life. So the third thing, which kind of comes in the context of this, is don't expect everybody to be a cheerleader, everybody to love what you do. uh, Most of life and most people will actually take an adversarial standpoint when it comes to you and your work, right? Now, some people will say try to convert them, some people will say have healthy debates. My way, and absolutely debatable, very abrasive, is what I figured out is, uh, I value my time so much that I only speak to people who positively reinstate my beliefs and actually act as a force multiplier and a compounder of my positive energy. Not to say I don't have healthy debates, but the moment I feel that the debate isn't healthy and the person is just arguing for the heck of it, and this is always going to happen, I almost mercilessly chop people out of my both online and personal lives. So, funny enough, it takes very little for me to ban somebody from Twitter, from my account, because time is so short that you only want to focus on what makes you successful, what makes you energized, what makes you enjoy your work life and whatever else you're doing. And that's always been my philosophy, and that's why you will always see me in few places, but wherever you see me, I'm always super engaged. uh, because I know that, hey, the most difficult thing to protect in life is really that source of positive energy that you may have inside. And if you can protect it long enough, great things will automatically happen.
Yeah, I think very well said. Protect your sanity. I think if
Yeah,
that's there, you can move the mountains.
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much, Vivek. That's so amazing. I think our conversation can go endless. So much to learn from you, and it's always a pleasure. Always meeting you. Now, in the end, is there anything that you want to share with the audience that they should look at, or they should refer it, to? Is there anything that you want to share?
Uh, I would actually say, I mean, audience just depends, what age group, of course, different age groups have different things. But I would say we today, I mean, in an accelerating way, we live in a very knowledge oriented society. Uh, and what I've seen lately is, people love taking shortcuts, right? But I would actually say we are moving into an era of super specialization, where unless you're super specialized at some field, whatever it might be, your value is going to diminish rapidly. So, being an educator, what I would kind of say is like this is the best time probably to decide what interests you and to super specialize in that if you really want to go ahead and win the game for the next few years. And most importantly, I think from I know that many of your viewers may be based out of India as well. I'm sure global, but India as well. I would say that this is also a time where a lot of deep tech startups, especially in cybersecurity, should be built from India. I, for one, if anybody wants to contact me ever to brainstorm about their startup idea, of course, whether from India or anywhere in the world, more than happy. But I would say deep tech cybersecurity startups, from India are still lacking. And, that's something I would highly encourage because I think that we have the brain power, the mind power, we have a critical mass of people who are there. The only thing remaining is, for a few good folks to take that initiative.
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm sure we have a long way to go, but we'll be able to achieve that.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, Vandana. Really
Yeah.
appreciate your time. It was nice talking to you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Vivek. It was such a wonderful time speaking with you, and it's an honor to have you on the show.
No, no, no. I mean, I mean, I'm humbled, but at the very same time, you yourself kind of gone such a long way. So it's fantastic to see your growth and always catch up with you, whether it's on conferences or on a Zoom call.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you so much.